Pay attention to this. A residential street at night. A woman walks toward an apartment building, her pace steady. She's coming home. Seconds later, two men jog past her in the opposite direction. Runners, exercising despite the late hour. The woman continues toward the building's entrance. The runners turn the corner, disappearing around the side of the structure. The woman enters from the front. 5 minutes pass. The street is empty. Then the woman bursts from the side entrance, the same entrance where the runners had turned. She's running, not jogging, sprinting. Seconds later, the two men emerge from the same entrance, chasing her. All three disappear from the camera's view. This is Dalton Ridge, Michigan, November 3rd, 2024. The woman is Shanice Williams, 30, a dental hygienist who lived alone on the third floor of that building. The two men are Connor Hayes and Ethan Marsh, both 35, longtime friends who ran together several times a week, often at night. And what that security footage captured would become the last confirmed sighting of Shanice Williams, alive. When Shanice didn't show up for work the next morning, her supervisor called her phone. No answer. Called again an hour later. Still nothing. By noon, the supervisor contacted Shanice's emergency contact, her sister Tanya, who said she hadn't heard from Shanice since the previous evening. Tanya went to Shanice's apartment, used her spare key to get in. The apartment was undisturbed. Shanice's purse was there. Her phone was there, plugged in and charging. Her car was in the parking lot. Everything suggested Shanice had come home and then vanished. Police were called immediately. Officers reviewed the building's security footage and found the sequence. Shanice entering at 9:47 p.m., the two runners passing by moments before, then circling the building. Then, at 9:52 p.m., Shanice fleeing from the side entrance with the two men chasing her. Investigators worked fast, enhanced the footage, identified the two runners through facial recognition and cross-referencing with residents. Connor Hayes lived in the building, 4th floor. Ethan Marsh lived 3 blocks away. Police brought both men in for questioning within hours. Connor and Ethan admitted they'd been running that night, admitted they'd passed Shanice on the street. But their story about what happened next didn't match what the footage suggested. Connor claimed they'd simply continued their run around the building, completing their usual route, said they never saw Shanice again after passing her on the street, had no idea why the footage would show them emerging from the building's side entrance, claimed they'd stopped briefly to stretch, then continued running. But investigators pressed. Why was Shanice running from that same entrance? Why were they chasing her? That's when the story changed. Ethan admitted they'd encountered Shanice inside the building, said she'd been in the hallway when they came through after their run. Said Connor lived there. They'd entered through the side door because it was closer to Connor's unit. They'd seen Shanice, said hello. She'd seemed nervous. Still didn't explain the chase. If you're already hooked, subscribe now. This case gets stranger. Under continued interrogation, Connor finally admitted more. Said he and Ethan had talked to Shanice in the hallway. She'd seemed afraid, tried to go to her apartment. They'd followed her. Not to hurt her, Connor claimed, just to talk. Said Shanice had dropped something, they were trying to give it back to her. But then why was she running? And why did it take 5 minutes between when she entered the building and when she fled? Investigators pulled records for Connor's apartment. Found his keycard had been used to access his unit at 9:49 p.m., 2 minutes after Shanice entered the building. But the camera showed Connor and Ethan emerging from the side entrance at 9:52 p.m., chasing Shanice. What happened during those 5 minutes? Faced with the timeline, Ethan broke. Admitted they'd forced Shanice into Connor's apartment. Said they'd grabbed her in the hallway, pulled her inside. Claimed they'd only wanted to talk to her, that Connor had noticed her before, thought she was attractive. But Shanice had fought back. Had managed to break free, ran from the apartment down the back stairs to the side entrance, tried to escape. They'd chased her. And then what? Both men claimed they'd given up the chase after a block. Said Shanice had outrun them, disappeared into the night. Said they'd gone back to Connor's apartment, assumed Shanice was fine, would go home or call police if she wanted. But Shanice never made it home. Her phone was in her apartment. Her keys were in her apartment. She'd left them behind when she fled Connor's unit, had nothing but the clothes she was wearing when she ran. Police searched Connor's apartment, found evidence consistent with a struggle, overturned furniture, items knocked from shelves, found Shanice's keys and phone on the floor near the door, dropped during the confrontation. They searched Ethan's home, found nothing immediately relevant. But they also searched Connor's vehicle. And that's where things got complicated. In the trunk, investigators found a jacket that didn't belong to Connor. DNA testing confirmed it was Shanice's jacket, one her sister identified from photos as something Shanice wore frequently. But Shanice hadn't been wearing a jacket when the security footage showed her entering the building. How did her jacket end up in Connor's trunk? Confronted with this evidence, both men's stories changed again. Now they admitted the chase had lasted longer than they'd initially claimed. Said they'd caught up to Shanice 3 blocks away. She'd been trying to flag down cars, yelling for help. They'd convinced her to stop, to talk. Told her they'd drive her home since she had no keys or phone. She'd gotten in Connor's car. That's when she must have left her jacket. But if they'd driven her home, where was she? Connor claimed they'd dropped her at a convenience store at her request. Said she'd wanted to call her sister from there. They'd left her and gone home. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe to follow cases where stories keep changing and truth gets buried deeper. Police pulled surveillance from every convenience store within 5 miles. None showed Shanice that night. Pulled traffic camera footage from the routes Connor would have taken. Found his car driving away from his building around 10:15 p.m., but couldn't track where it went. Too many gaps in camera coverage. Cell tower data showed Connor's phone pinging towers heading toward the outskirts of Dalton Ridge, near wooded areas and abandoned industrial sites. His phone stayed in that area for approximately 40 minutes before returning toward his apartment. When confronted with this, Connor claimed he and Ethan had stopped to finish their workout, had done some trail running out there before heading home. Just coincidence that it was the same night Shanice disappeared. But Ethan's phone showed the same tower pings, same 40-minute window. Both men had been in that remote area, late at night, right after Shanice was last seen. Search teams combed the wooded areas where the phone data had pinged. Canine units searched for days. They found nothing. No sign of Shanice. No evidence of what might have happened to her. Without a body, without witnesses, prosecutors had a problem. They could prove Connor and Ethan had forced Shanice into the apartment, had chased her, had lied repeatedly about what happened, but they couldn't prove murder. They charged both men with kidnapping and false imprisonment. Both were released on bail while awaiting trial. And that's when the case took an unexpected turn. 3 weeks after Shanice's disappearance, a hunter in the wooded area found something. A shallow grave, partially uncovered by recent rainfall. Inside was a body. But it wasn't Shanice Williams. The body was identified through dental records as Marissa Chen, 28, who'd been reported missing 7 months earlier. She'd lived in Dalton Ridge, disappeared after a night out with friends. Her case had gone cold. And Marissa had lived in the same building as Connor Hayes, same building where Shanice had lived. Investigators reopened Marissa's case with new focus, pulled old security footage from the building, found something they'd missed before. Connor Hayes in the hallway near Marissa's apartment the night she disappeared. They searched Connor's apartment again, this time looking for any connection to Marissa. Found photos on Connor's laptop, pictures of Marissa he'd taken without her knowledge, zoomed in from his window. Pictures of her coming and going. Pictures of her in her apartment, taken from across the courtyard. Connor had been watching her, and then she'd disappeared. Ethan, facing pressure, finally told the truth. Said Connor had done this before, that Marissa hadn't been the first, wouldn't have been the last, that the night with Shanice had started as Connor's obsession, Connor's plan, but had spiraled out of control when she fought back. Ethan admitted he'd helped Connor dispose of Marissa's body, admitted they'd taken Shanice to the same area that night. But he claimed Connor had acted alone, that he'd only driven the car, hadn't known what Connor intended to do. Subscribe now if you want to see how this ends. Cases like this need witnesses, and you're one. With Ethan's testimony, prosecutors finally had enough. They charged Connor Hayes with 2 counts of first-degree murder, Marissa Chen and Shanice Williams. Ethan was charged as an accessory to both murders and offered a plea deal in exchange for testimony against Connor. The search for Shanice's body intensified, focused on the areas where Marissa had been found. But weeks passed with no results. Then months. Shanice's family held a memorial service without a body to bury. Connor Hayes' trial began in June 2025. The prosecution presented the security footage, the phone data, Ethan's testimony, the evidence from Connor's apartment showing his obsession with women in his building. Connor maintained his innocence, claimed Ethan was lying, that the photos of Marissa were innocent, that Shanice had left his car alive, and he had no idea what happened to her after that. The jury didn't believe him, convicted him on both murder counts despite Shanice's body never being found. He was sentenced to life without parole. Ethan Marsh received 15 years as part of his plea agreement. He led investigators to 3 additional locations where he claimed Connor might have taken Shanice, but searches yielded nothing. Shanice Williams has never been found. Her case remains technically open, though investigators believe they know what happened, that Connor killed her that November night and disposed of her body somewhere it hasn't been discovered. Shanice's sister Tanya speaks at victim advocacy events about the importance of security measures in apartment buildings, about how residents should be aware of who lives around them, about how predators often target people in their own buildings because access is easy and familiarity breeds false security. "My sister died in the building where she should have been safest," Tanya said at one event, "and it happened because someone who lived there had been watching her, waiting for an opportunity." We need to talk about how apartment complexes can better protect residents from each other. The building where Connor, Marissa, and Shanice all lived has since installed additional security cameras covering all entrances and hallways. Several tenants moved out after Connor's arrest, unable to stay in a building where a killer had been living among them. The security footage of Shanice running from that building, Connor and Ethan chasing behind her, has never been publicly released. It remains sealed in evidence, the last visual proof of Shanice alive, the moment she almost escaped. Connor Hayes is incarcerated at a maximum security facility. He continues to maintain he didn't kill anyone. Ethan Marsh is serving his sentence at a separate facility. He's expressed remorse, but also claimed he was manipulated by Connor, didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. Marissa Chen's family finally got to bury their daughter. Shanice Williams's family is still waiting for that closure. And somewhere in the woods outside Dalton Ridge, investigators believe Shanice's body remains undiscovered. Subscribe for updates on unsolved cases and investigations that need public attention. Click the videos on your screen for similar cases where victims are still missing and families are still searching. Your attention keeps these cases alive. Every view, every share, every subscriber helps keep pressure on investigations. Thank you for watching, and remember, if someone in your building makes you uncomfortable, trust your instincts. Shanice's instincts told her to run. She just didn't get far enough.